The lights were so bright that Miguel could hardly see beyond the edge of the stage. The audience blurred into a sea of shadows and glimmering faces, and all he could hear was the pounding of his own heartbeat. He clutched the microphone as if it were an anchor keeping him from floating away. His palms were slick, his throat dry, but there was a kind of determination in his eyes that had been forged through years of hardship back home in Manila. This was it, the moment he had dreamed of since he was a boy, singing to the cracked ceiling of their small apartment, his mother washing clothes in the corner and humming along to his voice. Now, the same songs he once sang for loose change in crowded jeepneys had brought him here, to the grand stage of America's Got Talent. When Simon Cowell asked him his name, his voice quivered. "Miguel," he said softly, "from the Philippines." There was polite applause, though he could feel Simon's skepticism from where he sat, chin resting on his hand, that familiar unreadable expression. "And what are you going to sing for us?" Simon asked, his tone almost casual. "Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love, sir." A faint murmur moved through the audience. Another Elvis fan, they thought. Another impersonator in a leather jacket, hoping to copy the king. Miguel's fingers tightened around the microphone. The band started to play, and as the first gentle chords filled the air, he closed his eyes and inhaled. When he sang the first line, his voice came out small but pure, like the first crack of dawn. "Wise men say, only fools rush in." The tone was velvet, trembling but steadying with each word. People expected mimicry, but what came out was something deeper. His voice had warmth, emotion, and sincerity that went beyond imitation. It wasn't Elvis they were hearing, it was Miguel's own soul, shaped by pain, hope, and love. The crowd grew still, drawn in by the honesty of his tone. Heidi leaned forward, Sophia whispered, "He sounds beautiful," and even Howie looked genuinely moved. Simon's eyes, however, remained analytical, but something in his posture changed. He was no longer leaning back but slightly forward, intrigued. Miguel reached the chorus, and the vulnerability in his performance touched everyone. He didn't belt it out like a showman, he whispered it like a confession. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." The timbre of his voice cracked faintly, but instead of breaking the illusion, it deepened it, making the song feel painfully human. He sang as though he were remembering someone he once lost, as though each note carried a memory too heavy to bear. The crowd was utterly silent until the final phrase, "For I can't help falling in love with you," lingered in the air like a final breath. Then, in an instant, applause exploded, echoing through the theater. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, and Miguel's eyes widened in disbelief. He had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was real, it felt surreal. The lights seemed softer, the air lighter. His vision blurred with tears as he smiled shakily. The judges spoke one by one, each praising his tone and emotional delivery. When it came to Simon, the crowd quieted again. Simon looked at him thoughtfully and said, "I was expecting an impersonation. What I got instead was soul. You didn't just sing an Elvis song, you felt it. That's rare." Miguel's chest ached with emotion, and all he could do was bow his head slightly, whispering, "Thank you." He left the stage that night still shaking, but inside, something had changed. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, not as someone chasing a dream, but as someone worthy of it. The next round came faster than he expected. Miguel spent nights rehearsing alone in his small rented room, whispering Elvis lyrics under his breath while the city outside buzzed with life. He thought about the struggles that had brought him here, his mother selling street food just to buy him a plane ticket, his friends teasing him for chasing an impossible dream, and the weight of representing not just himself but an entire country. When he stepped back on stage, the crowd recognized him instantly. The cheers were louder, the lights brighter, but he felt calmer this time. Simon greeted him with a curious half-smile. "Miguel," he said, "you've surprised us once before. Do you have another Elvis song for us tonight?" Miguel nodded, a small confident grin forming. "Yes, sir, if I can dream. It's one of my favorites." Simon nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Let's hear it." The theater dimmed. The first strong piano chord rang out, and Miguel began. His voice was no longer timid. It was powerful, commanding, filled with conviction that could only come from living through real pain. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. His tone was deep and resonant, shaking through the speakers and hitting every listener in the chest. Each lyric was a cry for hope, a plea for change, a mirror of his own journey from poverty to this grand moment. The background lights shifted to red and gold, swirling like a sunrise breaking through clouds. Miguel poured every ounce of emotion into the song. He wasn't performing anymore, he was testifying. His eyes squeezed shut as he reached the chorus, the veins on his neck straining, his soul breaking open in front of millions. The audience was completely silent, many holding their breath. Sophia's hand covered her mouth, Heidi's eyes glistened with tears. When the final line came, "While I can think, while I can talk, while I can stand, while I can walk," his voice rose and cracked in raw emotion before falling into the last haunting whisper, "I can dream." For a second, there was silence. Then, an explosion of applause unlike anything before. The entire theater stood in ovation, cheering his name. Even Simon was on his feet, shaking his head with disbelief and a small smile that almost looked like pride. Then, without hesitation, Simon reached for the golden buzzer. The sound of it echoed like thunder, and golden confetti burst into the air, raining down over Miguel. The look on his face was pure disbelief, his hands covering his mouth, tears streaming down his cheeks as he fell to his knees. The crowd chanted his name, "Miguel! Miguel! Miguel!" Simon walked up to the stage, his usually cold expression replaced with something warm and genuine. He leaned into the mic and said, "I've seen countless performers sing Elvis. But tonight, you didn't imitate him, you brought him back, with your own heart. That's something only true artists can do." Miguel could barely speak. Through tears, he said, thank you, sir. Thank you for believing." The moment would replay in his dreams for months. The golden light, the roar of the crowd, and the feeling that his voice had finally reached the world. Overnight, the video went viral. The Filipino Elvis trended across every platform. Within hours, millions of people watched the clip, reacting with tears and awe. News outlets from Manila to Los Angeles featured his story, the boy who used to sing in backstreets now moving the world with his voice. In his small apartment in Quezon City, Miguel's mother sat in front of an old TV, her trembling hands clutching a rosary. When she saw her son drop to his knees under golden confetti, she wept openly, whispering prayers of gratitude. Their neighbors crowded around, cheering and clapping, shouting, "That's our Miguel." She smiled through tears, her heart swelling with pride. Meanwhile, Miguel walked the AGT hallways like someone in a dream. Contestants congratulated him, crew members gave him high fives, and strangers stopped to hug him. But the most unexpected moment came when Simon himself approached him backstage. Simon, always the toughest to please, looked almost reflective. "You know," he said quietly, "Elvis was one of my heroes. But tonight, for the first time, I didn't think of him, I thought of you." Miguel was speechless. Simon put a hand on his shoulder. "You've got something people can't fake. Heart. Never lose it." Later that night, Miguel stepped outside the studio and looked up at the city lights. The confetti still clung to his jacket, and the sounds of applause echoed faintly in his memory. He thought about his journey, the sleepless nights, the hunger, the sacrifices, the endless doubts, and he smiled. For years, he sang to survive. Tonight, he sang to inspire. Somewhere out there, a young boy in a Manila alleyway was watching him on a small phone screen, dreaming that maybe, just maybe, he could do it too. Miguel exhaled, eyes glistening, whispering softly, "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Elvis." And as the night wind carried his words away, the boy who once sang for coins under flickering streetlights had become a star the world would never forget.